It's not. Really though, how is Dead by Daylight still fun, or even as popular as ever? The die-hard community is a cesspool, the survivor gameplay has remained largely unchanged in 8 years, and the game itself is borderline unplayable without reshade or other third-party post-processing systems.
DBD's fun aspect comes from having a strong, reasonably simple gameplay loop at its foundation that welcomes some ever-evolving layers of complexity. By reasonably simple, I mean that the objectives have remained the same since 2016, meaning that returning new players will be able to pick up the title with relative ease. Survivors have to repair 5 generators and open the exit gates while evading the killer, and the killer has to prevent that from happening by striking survivors twice to down them, then hanging them on a sacrificial meat hook. If a survivor is hung 3 times or the timer under their name expires, they are dead. The very first layer of complexity and consistently renewed interest in the game comes from new killers and perks as they are introduced every few months. Each killer fundamentally changes the way that both teams have to play the game, centered entirely around their power. And since every killer has a unique power, the specific counterplay varies with each match, forcing both killer and survivor to make learned adjustments. Let's say that you're playing against, I don't know, Death Slinger, for example. So Slinger has a harpoon gun that takes 0.4 seconds to aim in, has a split-second firing delay, and takes up to 0.45 seconds to launch its projectile at max range. This is plenty enough time to look behind yourself and duck behind cover, or to strafe sharply to one side to avoid being hit. As the Deathslinger player, this means that I have to make adjustments based on how the survivor is playing. Sometimes I'll lead the shot in anticipation of a strafe. Sometimes I will be able to shoot through and over structures just to keep you on your toes. That's some good bullshit right there. And sometimes I'll just tap the aim button because it's funny seeing survivors run into things because they're not watching where they're going. That's an example for just one killer out of 37 that exist presently. Then, the relative strength of the killer also greatly depends on the map that players spawn into, of which there are 47. Maps in Dead by Daylight are semi-randomly generated. Each one has a defining main building and a killer shack, at least most of them do, that is guaranteed to spawn in the same location, with note exceptions of some indoor maps like Treatment Theater, RCPS, and The Game, which spawn neither. After that, the rest of the map is filled with what DBD players call tiles. Tiles are semi-incomplete structures that all have names based on their general shape, and some tiles are considered to be stronger than others. And some tiles, like this hanging garden in the Disturbed Ward map, are map-specific. The semi-random generation means that you'll load into a map with one set of tiles, but then the next time around on the same map you'll get a different set. And even the main building and killer shack can change. Main buildings will have some sort of windows open, while shack's orientation can rotate. Maps are also generally categorized into realms or similar thematics. The realm Autohaven Wreckers is a collection of 5 maps with a junkyard motif. Each realm spawns the same kind of materials around its tiles, like crushed car parts in Autohaven, or literal solid brick walls in Area of Crows. Point is that some entire realms are more favorable towards certain killers, and with each match generating a different map entirely, there is so much to learn. Getting good at adapting to these first 2 layers is so fun and satisfying because the results and objectives are plainly clear. Which leads me to my third and possibly biggest thing that makes DBD fun: human error. Dead by Daylight's inherent simplicity means that in higher MMR, a simple misstep can cause the entire game to spiral out of control. Sure, you may know how to play as or against a certain killer, but missing a crucial use of a killer's power or losing a coin flip decision in a chase scenario can make all the difference, balanced on a razor's edge or something along those lines. And according to the fan-made and operated website Nightlight, there are over 22 million unique perk combinations, and users have only submitted around a total of 340,000. Perks for the uninitiated are a collection of up to 4 passive skills that are equipped prior to starting a match. Survivors generally have perks that help them evade the killer or repair generators faster. Killers generally have perks that damage generators and inflict status debuffs on survivors. Some of these perks have powerful effects when paired with other perks, and some perks that are generally unfavored will otherwise be a perfect fit for a specific killer or survivor perk build. So similar to how a unique killer and map combination can make all the difference in a a game, unique perk combinations means that the game consistently has different miniature rule sets to play around. All of this is to say that Dead by Daylight works in a slot machine kind of way. Insert a voucher for 15 minutes of gameplay, pull the lever, and hypothetically get a different match every single time. It's fun in its unpredictability, set against a concrete foundation that offers a familiar first step to allow anyone to get in on the ground floor.
I personally only have around 450 hours in the game and have plenty left to learn, which is why I find it fun. And heck, I'm even consistently uploading videos on this channel here to showcase when I've done the minimum to learn a killer while streaming these matches on my Twitch channel. It's a good time.
Today's episode is brought to you by G Fuel. Shove it up your ass. It's a suppository now.
But I'm certain that by now, if you have heard about Dead by Daylight, you've also heard plenty of people complain about. What is there to complain about, you ask? The slot machine doesn't fucking work half the time.
In an ideal world, most perks would have some good non-detrimental synergy with other perks, diversifying player loadouts by giving them a wealth of good choices, rather than pigeonholing them into the 15 best perks while the other 120 plus remain close to useless. There may very well be 22 million unique perk combinations, but some perks are either straight downgrades of an already existing perk or are so rancid in terms of quality that nobody uses them. So now instead of the slot machine showing off a new build every time you pull the lever instead has a 1 in 3 chance to make the killer spawn in with the 3 best generator regression perks, and a 2 in 3 chance to give a survivor the perk Windows of Opportunity. Windows of Opportunity is the most used perk in the entire game, and it's inherently harmless. The perk constantly reveals in a bright yellow aura the locations of windows and pallets in a 32-meter radius. This is effective for planning escape routes and basically wasting as much of the killer's time as possible. The problem is that the perk is free information for any player, with the only drawback being the perk slot that it takes up. Less experienced players will typically run in straight lines to the glowing yellow thing like a moth to a flame and drop pallets when they feel slightly uncomfortable. More experienced players will know how to squeeze out every possible second out of a tile, and then Windows of Opportunity lights up the yellow brick road for them to continue that chase. I am of the opinion that Dead by Daylight's fun comes from learning how it works, and Windows of Opportunity removes that learning process by giving that information away for free anyway. Bad players use that as a crutch, while good players can easily weaponize it. The Chaos Shuffle event that was hosted during May was an event that randomized everybody's perk loadouts, and the game also presumably used the same MMR as normal queues, yet I remember my matches feeling significantly easier. My biases lead me to believe that this was because of a certain perk that wasn't present anymore. But on the other side of the coin, killers running Pomp Goes the Weasel, Pain Resonance, and Corrupt Intervention is just as much of a crutch as Windows of Opportunity in my books. By doing what is essentially the bare minimum, the killer gets maximally rewarded without having to understand much else about the game. Corrupt Intervention blocks the furthest 3 generators from the killer for 2 minutes or until a survivor is down, whichever happens first, so this forces survivors onto the closer 4 generators, narrowing the playing field and making it easier for the killer to find survivors. Scourge Hook Pain Resonance makes it so that the first time each survivor is hooked on a special light hook, the generator with the most progress immediately loses 20% of the full progress bar. Pomp Goes the Weasel activates for 45 seconds after hooking a survivor. The next generator that the killer kicks in this time frame loses 20% of its current progress. Generators get blocked for free, hook survivor, kick generator. It's predictably boring, and yet this trio of perks is easily the most common perk combination for killers, which doubly nullifies the map and killer sections of our busted up slot machine. Inexperienced players will be carried by this perk combination that stalls the game for them, while more experienced players will use it to ensure an iron grasp on their match results, pun intended. The reason why perks matter so much here is because they help facilitate the killer's power, not the other way around as I have slightly misled you to believe. Survivors, on the other hand, are solely dependent on their perks as they all function the same way outside of cosmetic differences. It does not matter if you're playing against Deathslinger, Demogorgon, or Day from Accounting, triple or even quad slowdown guarantees that very little will change between matches. And who needs to learn a map when your perks buy you all of the time that you need? It's not like I blame either neither side for taking what's strong though. With each passing balance update, Behavior Interactive has largely chosen to nerf the most popular perks, with the only remarkable buffs in my very brief year with the game being made towards Grim Embrace, Background Player, and Decisive Strike, all of which were nerfed months later. Sloppy Butcher and similar effects were basically gutted, making anti-heal strategies less effective. Call of Brynn Interruption were trashed, meaning that kicking generators is almost useless. Ultimate Weapon was nerfed to become a slightly larger version of Darkness Revealed, which is already an extremely niche perk. This has effectively left most killers with only generator regression perks to their names as the singular good strategy, and even that has received some nerfs now because most killers have defaulted to using it. Survivors have also been victim to the nerf hammer, what with the changes to Adrenaline and Buckle Up. Adrenaline feels okay still, but Buckle Up losing its primary synergy with For the People makes me think that we could have simply lowered the endurance timer instead of removing it entirely. In my amateur opinion, survivors have generally less to pick from because outside of the top 20 or so perks, most of them are pretty worthless. For killers, it's like Alien Instinct is bad, but it's fine because there are so many other better information perks out there. But for survivors, if you don't have Dead Hard, Off the Record, or Decisive Strike, you're straight out of luck on anti-tunneling perks. I could go on and on about how this category has less than this category. At the center of all of this is two solid drawbacks to the collective DBD experience. Number one, Behavior is terrified of doing mere number tweaks on most overperforming and underperforming perks, leading to constrictive metas. This makes the game less fun because a changing killer has far less impact on the game than their perks. Unless it's Skull Merchant, then everyone kind of hates her. My proof for this is that whenever streamers do challenges or create new commentary videos, the key feature is usually the perks, either to find a new synergy or to highlight a personal handicap. Again, I don't blame them. Perks affect every character in the DBD roster, and so a new perk always has the potential to find a home. Meanwhile, the base game has remained largely unchanged for nearly a decade. The only things that have changed are the new killers, their perks, and sometimes the maps. However, if you want to be able to experience it all, your wallet had better be full and ready because Dead by Daylight is a pay-to-win or at least pay-to-participate video game despite what I said in my video about a year ago. The base game of Dead by Daylight is $20, but so is the greatest game of all time or In the Will of the Wisp. This purchase gets you a tiny assortment of killers, survivors, and their respective perks. The survivors are fairly decent as Claudette offers botany knowledge and Nia has balanced landing. Meg has two of the best survivor perks in the form of Adrenaline and Sprint Burst, and there are also some decent killer perks included. Agitation and Brutal Strength on Trapper remain some of my favorite perks to run, while Max Thompson Jr. holds Enduring and Lightborn. It's not impossible to get good results with these perks thanks to human error, the glue that holds this game together, but your chances of success are statistically heightened when you use some specific perks that are locked behind paywalls. Scourge Hook Pain Resonance, despite the numbers nerf, is an artist-specific perk and is unequivocally the best killer perk in the game, and the artist requires a $20 DLC pack purchase to unlock. Windows of Opportunity is a perk from survivor Kate Denson and is a great tool for all skill levels. Kate is included in a totally separate $20 DLC pack. In fact, all of the DBD original characters have recently been tied up into 4 neat little DLC package, each costing $20 a piece, except these purchases do not include Sable Ward and the Unknown, which is a separate $7 purchase, then Gabriel Soma and the Singularity, which is another $7, and you can buy the base game and the first 3 DLC packs together for $70, how kind of them to knock $10 off, but still need to fork over another $34 separately to get all of the original characters. Characters belonging to other intellectual properties, though, each and every one of them has a separate price tag. Combined, all of these licensed chapters come to a whopping $150 added on top of the original $104 that you need for the non-licensed content. Remember, this isn't just for the characters, but their associated perks as well. If I have paid over $200 to create a tangible advantage for myself over other people around my skill level, that is paying to win, or paying to get the full experience, because if you don't shoulder the heavy price tag, you are always locked out of trying something new and possibly more fun or powerful. And the worst part is that the game is always adding more and more content as time goes on, which means that while the price tag might be $254 now, that price will continue to rise, especially since our our next DLC is confirmed to be from a licensed intellectual property. Some of you might also say, oh but Kai, the Shrine of Secrets exists and you can unlock original killers using iridescent shards, but I reject this as a serious argument. In Dead by Daylight, you have a form of currency called iridescent shards, which you gain by leveling up your account. Leveling your account is done by playing games, and you get around 1 level per hour of in-game time, which nets you an average of 300 shards per level. Most of the original characters, aside from some of the older ones, cost 9,000 iridescent shards, which is equivalent to 30 hours of in-game time for one singular character, not including the character on the other side of the chapter. When I purchased my DLC packs, I got all of the characters, save for the Knight, the Singularity, the Skull Merchant, and the Dredge, and at 450 hours in-game, I've only just now been able to purchase that final character. Comparatively, I also have around 450 hours in Apex Legends, and by the time I had stopped playing, I had unlocked every single character without having to spend a single dime on the title. The Shrine of Secrets is a tab where once a week, 4 random perks from any character will be displayed for a 2,000 iridescent shard purchase, and this is still around 8 hours of gameplay that you're trading in for a perk, which takes away from your hard-earned pool that you might be putting towards a killer to unlock anyway. If you want to see another perk here, well, you'll have to wait another week. And remember, there are over 200 perks in the game, and most of them are pretty fucking awful. So you're rolling 4 out of those over 200 just to hope that you can spend a drip-fed currency on a restrictive roulette wheel. You are forced to buy the DLCs as a convenience fee. And it's not like these DLCs don't go on sale and that the final price is always as high as I make it out to be, but it's still pretty shitty to have to pay around $100 even to feel like I'm experiencing the full title. Now, I'm having fun because I get to learn the game and I like making content on it. That's my justification for my purchases, but I simply can't imagine that's the case for most players though. If you play with or have played with friends, eventually you will be beaten out by people with perks that are just better than what you're equipped to handle. With the game celebrating its 8th anniversary recently, it's genuinely surprising that its base formula has remained largely unchanged, giving those with fewer perks and characters less to fall back on if their game experience starts to run dry. Oh, also, here's a fun fact. If you purchase a character with iridescent shards, that purchase does not reduce the price of any DLC packs that you get in the future. I bought Legion initially with iridescent shards because I wanted an easy killer to learn, but it changed nothing about the price of the DLC pack I went on to purchase later, so you had either better buy it now or prepare yourself for the long haul. And even if you buy the DLCs, you also don't get immediate access to the perks that you purchased the character for. Dead by Daylight has this prestige system using what's called the Blood Web, where players can spend a currency called blood points to unlock modifications for their killers, items for their survivors, and perks on either side. Blood points are given after the conclusion of a match, and more are awarded depending on what the player did that match, the amount of which can be increased by different modifiers called offerings. The Blood Web is character specific and takes around 20,000 blood points per level, and a prestige level takes 50 levels, equating to around 1 million blood points per prestige level. Once a character reaches Prestige 1, the lowest tier of their specific perks are then shared with every other character for them to use and randomly unlock in their specific blood webs. Reaching Prestige 3, like I've been doing on A Shiny Sylveon, my other YouTube channel, unlocks the highest tier of this perk for everyone, but it takes 3 million blood points. On average, I've found that this takes around 20 matches to complete, or around 9 game hours per individual character. And may I remind you once again that there are 78 characters in total between Killer and Survivor. The worst part is that not every character has good perks. Some only have one good one to their name, while others like poor Telita Lyra are so unfathomably awful that you'd only ever unlock her for completionist sake and no other reason whatsoever. Therefore, if you want to unlock that one good perk for everyone to use, you're spending up to 9 game hours per character so that you can use Lethal Pursuer sometimes. In Dead by Daylight, players accept these horrendous terms because, to be honest with you, there's nothing like it. It's kind of like Twitter, you know, Blue Sky exists, but the platform doesn't have video support and is mostly home to lukewarm left-of-center politics, making everyone migrate back to Twitter again. Texas Chainsaw Massacre had been circling the drain for a while now, and people are trudging back to DBD again. F13 outright doesn't exist anymore, so where have people gone? Back to DBD. Killer Clowns looks promising, but I'm sure the same thing will happen again. People that enjoy Dead by Daylight still have something to play for, as they are perpetually chasing that high that they got when the slot machine gave them something unique, and the familiarity has let them sign off on its trashier elements. The game is buggy as hell, but we shrug it off and cheer when behavior does the bare minimum because our expectations have gotten so low. It's really hard to explain succinctly how making good guesses and gaining mastery over a deadly obstacle course feels innately satisfying, so I'd recommend watching the DBD League to see some high tier play to show you just how precise things can get. And despite my criticisms, I have nothing against the people who still enjoy the game, because I still enjoy it too. I'm simply pointing out that, from a casual and introductory perspective, there's not a lot to endear it to a newer audience. The community has also garnered some notoriety over the years, and I think that it's a sign that some people need to move on.
So, how exactly is Dead by Daylight still fun? By having a simplistic nature that promises to expand its horizons as far as your wallet is disposable and your interest for niche knowledge is piqued. Eventually, that empty bank account becomes a sunk cost fallacy, and that knowledge that you've acquired becomes a hostile point of comfort, because by now you've spent 3,000 hours in the game. It is, for all intents and purposes, something familiar to keep coming back to. But at this point, I have to ask you, are you really enjoying yourself?